Thanks for tuning in. I assume there's only been going to be one or two people to watch, and you're one of them, so I appreciate you. I've been thinking about what to talk about today, and I've been reading in the sketchbook, which is by Washington Irving, one of the first American writers. He wrote, I'm sure you're familiar with the Sleepy Hollow and Rip Van Winkle. I've been reading Rip Van Winkle today, rereading, and thinking about what it means or what the story means for the culture of his day and how that applies to our culture and who we are today, if it applies. And I think it does. In a sad way. But almost also in an opposite way. As if we've gone to sleep at the end of the story and woken up at the beginning. And if you don't know, the story of Rip Van Winkle by Washington Irving, it was written in 1819, just 5 years after the events of the War of 1812. So in 1814, after the Capitol building had been burned, the English were in Boston. Not Boston. Sorry, Baltimore Harbor. The English were in Baltimore Harbor, bombarding the shore, and the flag was flying. Francis Scott Key sought and penned our national anthem because of this war. It was a time of, the home of the brave, the land of the free and the home of the brave. It was that kind of America, that kind of newborn, passionate, we have to create something from nothing. We were basically enslaved to England, and now we are free. So what are we going to do with that freedom? And England wants to take that back. So that's the kind of attitude that was during this time period. And Washington Irving was a part of that. He was one of the first, you could say, romantic writers, whereas they took that individual who went out into nature to really discover who they were, had this incredible experience, leaving the mundane, the ordinary of the town, going into nature, the magical realm where anything can happen. And Rip Van Winkle did that. He left his hometown. He went out into the woods. He found these, little gnomes or trolls or whatever, and they gave him a drought, and he fell asleep for 20 years. Don't trust the gnomes or trolls or whatever they were. And then he came home, and it was 20 years later. His gun had rusted, which should have been a big clue for him. His beard had grown, and he was 20 years older. He went to his house, and his wife was not there. There was a dog that looked like his, but it didn't really know him, and it snarled at him. He went to his favorite hangout, where the boys would be, and where there used to be a picture of George III, there is now a picture of George Washington. And his friends were not there. They would typically sit there and they would lounge around and they would talk about news that was a month old and just kind of laze in life. But now he comes in and it has a completely different atmosphere. It's busy, it's bustling. People are talking about the next election. They're talking about what's coming, what's going, what is going to happen. They're excited about progress. So I feel that America has almost gone to sleep and gone back to that time. They're going back to that time before that excitement of progress. I know in this upcoming generation, I work in the classroom, and students, they don't know what the future is going to look like, and they don't have a lot of hope. They don't dream big because they don't trust our country. They don't trust the adults to set them up for success. They don't trust that there's going to be opportunity. They think it's going to be a struggle, and they don't know what to do about it. You have this increasing level of depression in the culture, whereas, like Rip Van Winkle, people don't want to take care of their own stuff. We have an increasing number of just jobs that are laying empty in the country right now, because people don't want to go work, because they're thinking, why build anything? Inflation is going to mean that our money doesn't mean anything. I'll never be able to afford a house. I might as well just live in, an RV or whatever I can find, and drive around and do, piddly and, live off my parents or whatever it is, and just do the minimal. And then the students in school, of course, getting them to do any work has been almost impossible. It was always hard, but this year, as I've heard from all the other teachers, is especially difficult. So what does this mean? What can we do? We can't fall asleep. We need to have hope. And what does that mean? That means opportunity. Not opportunity working for the government, because that was pre falling asleep for Rip Van Winkle, when everything was done by King George III. His word was law, and he would always complain about them. He would complain that they weren't doing enough. They needed to pay more taxes. They needed to pay off the French and Indian War. They had to pay, do all this. And there wasn't the opportunity that people really thought there should be. And they felt like they were under the thumb of the government. But after the Declaration of Independence, after the Revolutionary War, people felt ownership. They felt like they were building something for themselves. Not building something for the government, but building something for them and their families. And as a man, I know that I'd be willing to work to the bone if it meant building something for my family. But if it's not building something for my family and I'm just kind of getting by, then I might as well just spend time with my family. So we're always building towards something. But if America wants to progress, the government has to get out of the way. Unfortunately, recently with Joe Manchin going against the other Democrats and striking down the Build Back Better plan that would not build back better, would just give more control to the government and less control to private business, which is where it needs to be. That's where innovation happens. The government is not innovative. They would just slow down things and muck up the gears. It has to happen with competition. And, Elon Musk was right when he said that, he was hoping that the bill wouldn't pass because it wouldn't help them. And people are like, oh, well, what about the electric vehicle charging ports throughout the country? What about those? And he's like, why can't we have those anyways? Why does the government need to do that? Does the government fund gas stations? Because if somebody wants to make a profit, they're going to put those charging stations around and people are going to go charge their vehicles. And as the technology increases, guess what? They're going to improve their technology to make more money quicker, because that's what businesses do. Whereas a government would put in a charging port and leave it there for 20 years, and it would dilapidate, and it would be out of, not very technologically savvy, and it would be like the rotary phone 50 years ago, as opposed to the privatization of the telephone network, and now we have cell phones. Now I'm recording from a cell phone, which is phenomenal. But government has to get out of the way. It's the problem. And I don't think the students know that. They just know something's wrong, and they're scared. But they don't really want to admit it. They just kind of recede into their video games, recede into their social relationships, maybe around the table like Rip Van Winkle, talk about whatever, and allow the world to go by. We shouldn't build back better. We just need to do better.